Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is the Institute Saga Shield Reforged in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 1, Crucible. Nick Fury looked out of the panoramic bridge window at the debris-covered landscape slowly scrolling by below them. As they passed over the first of the wrecked helicarriers, he sighed. At least we'll have plenty of spare parts. It looks like, with a slight adjustment, we'll be able to replace the Gravetick turbines with the repulsor engine wings. Tony Stark noted and Fury nodded. Given the damage, I doubt that even one of those ships could be salvaged without requiring a total rebuild. What the hell were the Council thinking, anyway? I think that we need to get them scanned to check that they aren't linked to Hydra. Tony said. I've already made an appointment with Sage to check myself, Pepper and the rest of the Avengers. I don't think any of us are at risk, but... Fury snorted. You're setting a good example? You. Tony paled. Ah hell. I'm becoming respectable. No. I'm too handsome to be respectable. Fury smirked at the panicking multi-billionaire, then turned his attention to the orbiting screens showing different views of the three battlefields. Sir. A voice called, communication from Governor General Zod, Apocalypse has been secured in stasis. Communication from Genosha. Another voice called. King Marco sends his regards and thanks us for his new Kryptonian guardian. The clone. Fury and Tony chorused, then they glanced at each other. The clone that Magneto had made. Has to be her. Tony continued and Fury nodded. So, Genosha is about to get its own Kryptonian. Fury grumbled. Who next? Well, Doom has two, sorta. Tony shrugged as his fingers danced across a nearby screen. Pulling up battlefield after mission stats. The Air Force took significant losses, almost half the craft were shot down by the Sentinels, although all but 17 pilots managed to eject. No hero fatalities, but several of the teams will be at half strength or below as their members heal. The military ground forces report only a few injuries, but they hadn't fully mobilized by the time that the action was finished. They're moving in now to help with the clear-up. It's going to take months to get things cleared up. Fury sighed, then he summoned a new screen. And the Triskelion, sorting that mess out will take years. Tony blinked. What? But, it was barely damaged. But Hydra were inside from the first day. Fury countered. They infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. before we even started building the damned place. Who knows how many hidden rooms and spy systems are in it now. And as for the staff, I'm going to have to hire a team of telepaths to sort out the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents from the Hydra infiltrators. Shit. Tony agreed in realization. Man, am I glad that I'm not in line to lead S.H.I.E.L.D. Number 4, actually. Fury said absently and Tony froze. What? You are the fourth leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury repeated. I'm number 1. Should I fall, Abigail Brand is second, then Jasper Sitwell. You're number 4 due to your patriotism and experience in leading large organizations. What about Cap? Tony protested. He's too patriotic and still catching up with modern technology, although the new stuff from New Krypton isn't helping him much. Fury sighed. He's number 15. Just before Reed Richards. Reed is number 16. Tony asked in disbelief. 18, actually. Fury corrected as he turned back to look over the battlefield once more. Sir. Coulson. Fury nodded. I have a mission for you. Agent Phil Coulson stepped onto the bridge of the helicarrier, his gaze briefly darting to the smoking wreckage on the ground below. The bridge crew were far more somber than normal, the atmosphere of the bridge heavy, but somehow still triumphant. To one side, Tony Stark stood in his Iron Man armor, his face a rather amusing mix of emotions as if he had received some news that he was uncertain how he should feel about. Sir. Coulson. Fury said without turning round. I have a mission for you. I need you to visit Governor General Zod. It seems that we need a new Triskelion. Coulson blinked, his mind darting through the chain of logic. The facts assembled in his mindscape and he mentally nodded as he put the disparate pieces of information together. Understood, sir. I agree that there is virtually no chance that Hydra could have infiltrated New Krypton. You certain that he isn't a telepath? Tony asked, and a corner of Coulson's mouth briefly twitched upwards before he got himself under control again. Limits, sir. Try not to bankrupt us. Fury shrugged. Otherwise, use your best judgment. Of course, sir. Coulson nodded. May I suggest we use one of the alternate sites to locate the Triskelion too? Fury looked blank for a moment. Explain. It would be cheaper given how reinforced the Triskelion is and thus how difficult it will be to demolish and clear. In addition, once we have removed all of the classified technology, the building could be repurposed. It would take only a relatively small effort to turn it into a shopping mall and apartment complex. We could even maintain a few safe houses in it. No one would expect that. An excellent idea. Fury finally agreed. It would also provide a welcome boost to our funds. Phil nodded, then turned and walked off the bridge. Making his way through the corridors, he paused outside a reinforced room just long enough to present his security pass, then he entered it, pausing briefly as he looked at the door. The portal was set into a 3-meter square slab of Kryptonian metallic crystal alloy which encased all of the inner workings, protecting them from damage. A raised walkway led through the portal, a walkway that was set above a large bundle of pipes, cables and conduits which acted to link the helicarrier to the other door-enabled shield bases, although the Triskelion link was now non-functional due to the Apocalypse incident. Resuming his progress, Coulson stepped through the door and onto the opaque force field-protected shield balcony in the Hall of Doors. Once again, he had to pause for the door to open, then he stepped out onto the walkway, turning right as he headed for the door that linked to the newer Hall of Doors on New Krypton, nodding politely to the people using the hall as he did so. And how was this even allowed to happen? One of the faceless silhouettes on the meeting room screens demanded. It happened because of all the threats that S.H.I.E.L.D. has prepared for. The return of a 3,000-year-old Omega-class mutant tyrant was not one that was foreseeable. Fury half-snarled. Rest assured that once the planning division are cleared, they will be asked to put together plans for other myth-based eventualities, including an attack by Galactus if necessary. Who? Galactus? According to the Kryptonians, it's an ancient planet-devouring entity. Fury shot back. Apparently, although it destroys planets, its very presence prevents something worse from entering our universe, so destroying it isn't a viable option. Surely if you can destroy it, then whatever comes after it can be destroyed as well. One of the other figures asked, and Fury shook his head. Unlikely. I've spoken to Odin about this, and Galactus is supposed to act as the lock, its very existence holding back a being so powerful that it took the Asgardians, the Celestials, the Eternals, and the Kal-Tash to lock it away. Almost 3/4 of each race died in the process, with the Kal-Tash being wiped completely out of existence. Do you honestly believe that we are powerful enough to match them? None of the figures replied, and Fury nodded in aggrieved satisfaction. Good. Moving on. Now that we know that S.H.I.E.L.D. is compromised, I've already started to reconfigure it. Only those who pass a telepathics can by a trusted telepath or who pass other tests that I am arranging will be allowed to serve in the new S.H.I.E.L.D. I had Xavier check me to ensure that I wasn't a Manchurian candidate. I passed. If S.H.I.E.L.D. is compromised, what about the others? A female silhouette asked, and Fury bowed his head slightly. We have no choice but to assume that all departments have been compromised to some degree. SARD is currently performing its own screening, having secured the services of a couple of telepaths from the Justice League. We have also placed an order with Black Ink for their truth potion, Veritaserum, with the application and questioning to be overseen by their own people. Since neither organization is native to our reality, they will not have been infiltrated. We are also preparing to start negotiations with the Yamanaka clan for the use of some of their mind walkers. How long will it take to verify and reassign your people? Hard to say. Fury replied. Best case scenario, maybe 6 months, assuming that the Veritaserum works as expected. Worst case? Several years with no guarantee of success. The figures on the screens moved as if they were talking to each other, then one of them spoke. You have our full support, Director. It is good to know that you are in control of the situation. We will not keep you from your duties any longer. The screens blinked off and Fury glared at them. Control, hell. He muttered as he turned to leave. If I had control, this situation wouldn't remind me so much of the snakes on AMFing plane. And that was a truly F-ed up undercover mission. The screens in the study lit up and the woman in the chair looked at the silhouettes on the monitors before her. All right, she said in a commanding voice. Does anyone have any idea of what the hell this Yamanaka clan is and where they are? I think I might. One of the figures finally said hesitantly. I think they were mentioned as part of the report on the inter-reality diplomatic missions, but I'm not certain. That gives us a place to start. The woman nodded. I shall begin checking the reports to get more details. We shall reconvene tomorrow at noon. The screens went blank and the woman tapped at her computer, setting up a search through the records available to her. A couple of moments later, her eyebrows shot up. Ninja. Agent Coulson. Phil looked around, then his gaze rose as the owner of the voice that had hailed him lowered herself to the ground. I'm Sabra. She said with a slight smile. United Krypton Intelligence Service. I thought that you were a Mossad agent. Phil remarked and Sabra nodded. I was, but Mossad was folded into the UKIS. Well, I say folded, but since there were only 3 Kryptonians in their military intelligence. Sabra broke off with a slight shrug. Anyway, I am here to take you Lieutenant Governor Feyre. If you will come with me. Phil quickly took position by her side as they walked through the flows of people passing through the new Krypton Hall of Doors. Phil looked round curiously, then he almost halted as a centaur trotted past, a young girl perched on his back. Was that a new Olympian? He was. Sabra confirmed. They are starting to spread out more, interacting more with the other nations. Well, I say nations, it's more similar to the United Kingdom, really. So which one is Scotland? Phil deadpanned, only to receive a flat look in reply. Sorry. The metaphor doesn't really hold up all that well. Sabra admitted as they exited through a portal that led them out of the base of an obelisk. The car is this way. Phil felt his eyebrows raise as he saw the vehicle that they were heading towards. The car looked perfectly normal, at least until you spotted the lack of wheels, or indeed the wells for the missing wheels to fit into. Instead, the open-topped car rested on a set of retractable landing pads. Ground effect anti-gravity technology. Sabra explained as she vaulted into the driver's seat, not bothering to open the door. As she began tapping various controls, powering up the vehicle, Phil opened the passenger door and sat down. Seat belt. Tractor field. Sabra said as Phil felt himself being pulled gently but firmly into the embrace of the seat. An instant later, the car rose slightly and Phil heard the whine of the landing gear retracting. Hold on. Sabra smirked, then Phil was almost slammed back into his seat as the car leapt forwards, banking into a turn before straightening out and speeding up. There's no breeze because of a low-powered force field. Sabra said, preempting his question. You have questions, so now is the time to ask them. So that is why we didn't simply take a door to our destination. Phil realized. That and you don't have a valid security pass for that particular door, yes? Phil nodded. I see. Getting into the habit of security when enemies can't reach you, so that you are prepared for when they can. Very clever. I'm glad you think so. Sabra chuckled. Chapter 2, Furnace. Fury stood on the lower launch deck of the helicarrier as he awaited his guest. A slight movement in the distance caught his attention and he turned to get a better look at the 2 dots that had emerged from a distant cloud bank. A few moments passed as the dots seemed to swell into recognizable shapes, with the smaller one being a black-clad blonde woman flying without aid. The other dot was a man wearing dark clothes and a long coat, a man who was astride a motorcycle that was driving through the sky with no apparent means of support. The 2 of them swooped in and the woman touched down barely 3 paces away from Fury while the man drove round to the front of the helicarrier, landing perfectly and racing up to them, skidding to a halt. Mr. Black. Mrs. Black, thank you for coming. Call me Kara. The woman smiled. And he's Joe. Since it's business, I'll remain formal. Fury said, and Kara rolled her eyes while Joe Black dismounted from his bike, then shrunk it down and placed it in a pocket. Aside from a slight eye twitch, Fury ignored the magical trick. So, you wanted Veritaserum. Several barrels of it, in fact. Mr. Black said, cutting across the meaningless pleasantries with a directness that Fury found refreshing. You do know how easy it is to abuse that stuff, don't you? I do, Fury admitted, but I need to check the loyalty of as many of my people as possible. My organization has been penetrated to an alarming degree and I need to know who to trust, who to fire and who to put on trial. If it helps, you are not my only recourse. Mr. Black nodded slowly. I think I see. So, it's a matter of loyalty, I wonder. Oh. Kara said with a teasing smile. Watch out, he's getting an idea. Mr. Black gave his wife a quelling glance, then nodded in confirmation of the decision he had made. How about something different? I'll be happy to make an archway that will only let through those who have no intention of betraying S.H.I.E.L.D. You can then offer the ones who are blocked Veritaserum to see why, or simply accept their resignations. Acceptable. Fury agreed. How much will the archway cost? I'll handle this. Kara interrupted, earning a confused look from her husband. What? We both know how little you care about money, you'd probably just give it to him for free. And what's wrong with that? Mr. Black asked plaintively. Agent Coulson. The woman behind the desk said in greeting. Lieutenant Governor Feyre. Phil Coulson replied with a nod verging on a bow. Thank you for agreeing to see me. It makes a change from E-forms. Feyre sighed, glaring at the hollow screen before banishing it. Have a seat. Phil moved to one of the seats in front of the desk and lowered himself into it, only to jump out as it started to ripple under him. What? He began before catching himself. Sorry. That caught me by surprise. Feyre smirked as he carefully sat down again, this time not moving as the contours of the seat altered to support his weight perfectly. Comfy. Indeed. Feyre agreed, leaning back slightly in her chair. Now, what may I help you with? S.H.I.E.L.D. is having an issue with one of the results of the Apocalypse incident. Phil began. We have discovered that our organization has been infiltrated by Hydra. We have initiated protocols designed to flush out and neutralize the infiltrators, but we also have a different problem. The Triskelion. I thought it wasn't damaged. Feyre noted and Phil nodded. Aside from some broken windows and bullet holes, plus quite a few bloodstains, it wasn't. However, we no longer trust it, since Hydra had already begun its infiltration of S.H.I.E.L.D. when it was constructed. So you have no clue as to what bugs and hidden equipment might be in there. Feyre realized. So, why come to us? Director Fury was hoping to purchase a new building from you. Phil revealed and Feyre stared at him as if he'd just pulled his face off to reveal himself to be the Red Skull. Wants to purchase a building. She finally managed, then she shook her head. I admit, I did not see that one coming. We've already started pulling out all of the equipment and have teams checking it to ensure that the computers aren't compromised. Phil explained. I've also got the plans for the old Triskelion, showing what areas were assigned to what. Feyre nodded slowly. I'll put you into contact with our resident architect. I'm certain that he'll enjoy the new challenge. Fury-sama. A voice said and Fury turned to find himself looking at a blond man dressed in a green flak jacket with a red haori over it. A bandana with a metal plate covered his forehead, a plate with an odd swirl design on it. I am Yamanaka Inoichi. Black Dono said that you wished to speak about hiring my clan for a mission. I do. Fury agreed. I have a problem and I was hoping that your people have the expertise to help us. That will be all, Agent Avery. The agent who had escorted Inoichi to the bridge saluted before departing and Inoichi walked forwards to join Fury in looking out over the slowly scrolling landscape beneath. My world does not have anything like this. He admitted. Yet. It is the culmination of a large amount of technical advances. Fury said. I do not know much about your land, but Mr. Black said that you could be trusted. How do you know him? Black Dono is the primary summons of Uzumaki Naruto. Inoichi said with a wry smile. He is the scariest being I have ever faced. Not surprising, given that he is the Shinigami. Fury blinked. Wait. Black is death. You did not know. We are talking about the same death here, aren't we? Fury said, turning to look at Inoichi. You know, skeletal form, scythe, dark robe. Inoichi nodded. I have seen him assume that form. There is no question. He is the Shinigami. For a long moment, Fury simply stared at the ninja. Phil stared at the holographic display in front of him as Azaltai fussed over the projected tower. The virtual building itself was trilaterally symmetrical with 3 shard-like towers rising to points. A disc-like multi-level platform was supported by the towers, giving the impression that it had been dropped so that the towers lanced through it while a 15-level cylinder rose up, filling the gap between the towers to a third of the way up to the disc with a thinner cylinder rising up another 15 levels. The top of the thinner cylinder was slightly recessed in order to hold a grassy space that bordered on being a park, while the top of the disc had 3 partially recessed helipads with hangars. Below ground level, the building was a single cylinder that expanded outwards to slightly beyond the bases of the towers, lancing downwards as deep as the tower extended above ground. Voila! As the French say. Azaltai declared. The Triskelion 2, designed for maximum efficiency and security. The entrances all incorporate scanner archways, while defensive weaponry is strategically located on the vertical towers, around the upper disc and atop the edge of the lower balcony. Shield generators are located just here, and here, while the upper portions of the towers hold the primary communication and sensor arrays to ensure maximum signal reach. Now, the areas inside, well, just watch. I've color-coded it. A new image formed of the original Triskelion and its internal spaces glowed in different colors, with tags attached to each color to explain what it was. As Phil watched, each color slowly separated and then transferred across to settle into the Triskelion 2, expanding to fit into its new location but remaining in a similar place relative to all the other sections. By the time that all the colors had transitioned, it was obvious that the Triskelion 2 had almost 3 times as much volume as the original tower and extra space to spare. There is room for further expansion if needed. Azaltai pointed out almost needlessly. The outer shell is comprised of the same alloy that we use on our spaceships, so it will be able to survive even a helicarrier colliding with it with no more than minor denting and the replacement of some windows. Phil whistled in appreciation. Amazing, but how much will it cost? Not as much as you obviously think. Azaltai laughed. We'll use the shipyard to build it and then lower it into position and connect it to the water, electricity, and so on. So, how much? Phil asked again. So Fury is trying to rebuild S.H.I.E.L.D. Modok mused as he mentally sorted through a dozen different data streams. A small part of his awareness started calculating the probability of detection for various spies that had maintained their cover during the attack by Apocalypse and cross-referenced them with how much damage they could cause Hydra if uncovered and interrogated. And this time he is aware of the problem he faces, but once I find out which construction company he is going to use, I will ensure that his new headquarters is not as secure as he would like to believe. 100 encoded messages shout out through the internet and Modok started running probability scenarios on how much technology could be intercepted from the downed helicarriers before S.H.I.E.L.D. worked out what was going on even as he finished his journey. Floating through the doorway, Modok stared as the semi-complete structure in front of him, a structure based on the stolen plans of the now crashed helicarriers. Within a year, the right to rule will be complete. He smirked. It will serve well as my new prosthetic body. An alert caught his attention and Modok switched another portion of his awareness to the video file that the semi-independent program had highlighted. A spinning icon with one side being the X-Men's X in a circle and the other being the stylized bugle of the Daily Bugle spun as a voiceover sounded. Tonight on Daily Bugle Online, an interview with an X-Man. The hero of Bayville High, Nightcrawler. Modok quickly downloaded the file and analyzed it. Interesting. A being with the ability to forcibly activate the X gene. I will have to keep watch for this, Azazel. Yes, this will do. Fury finally pronounced, looking up from the holographic display. How long will it take to build? They will be using the shipyard, so a month or so. Phil Coulson said, earning a surprised look. The advantage is that they can build it in zero gravity, meaning that they can simply assemble all the bits and push them into place rather than having to do each level sequentially. Fury nodded, then turned his attention back to the hologram, zooming in and out as he examined the various areas. They have even included a reinforced inner core and a large number of secure rooms. He finally said in a tone that mixed satisfaction and admiration. When can they start? As soon as I send them confirmation, sir. Send it. No more mutants. Use the cure. The mob waved various signs as they chanted their slogans. Some of the signs carried hand-drawn pictures of hypodermic needles with the word cure printed on the side, while others carried phrases and sentences that showed a mix of deep insight and total ignorance. Be human again. Mutatunts suk. Mutants, crimes against nature. God created man, the devil mutated them. Kill all muntats. A couple of effigies were also waved in the air, both of them hung on nooses and with a sign saying mutant strung over their chests. The police blocking the chanting mob were highly professional, using the bare minimum of force needed to prevent the protesters from heading towards Bayville High. Wow! Alex said as he watched the not distant enough crowd from the school roof. Seeing so many mutant haters is it's just wrong. I wonder how they feel about metahumans. Speak commented. I mean, most of them out there wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a mutant and a metahuman, or even a mutant and an alien. Remind me to ask for more lessons in using our powers for crowd control purposes. Alex finally said. If those people break through, we'll have to improvise in order to protect the school, and you remember what happened last time Sunspot improvised. Yeah, but on the plus side, the new gazebo has very comfortable benches. Chapter 3, Anvil. And anti-mutant protests are on the rise. Agent Alvarez said, pressing the control that switched the briefing screens to a graph and several video windows. Despite the backlash caused by the actions of the group calling itself the Friends of Humanity, especially the one at Bayville, anti-mutant sentiment is still rising. And it is rising because Fury prompted. Alvarez pressed another control and the graph vanished, being replaced by the image of a robed man. We have been unable to identify this man, but he calls himself the Supreme Pontiff of the Church of Humanity. The platform that they work from is that God created humanity and mutants are people who have been corrupted by the devil. They have already fended off 2 lawsuits by using the freedom of religion laws, and while they have so far refrained from using violence, our analysts indicate that their propaganda is becoming more extreme, indicating that they may well try to begin attacking mutants soon. Are the Coh linked to the FA? Officially, no. Alvarez said, glancing down at the screen hovering in front of him. Unofficially, at least a quarter of their membership is comprised of FA activists and known sympathizers. This is irritating. Fury finally stated. Civil unrest rising just as S.H.I.E.L.D. is forced to suspend over 90% of its activities in order to clean house. What do our analysts think are the chances that someone is fomenting the unrest to take advantage of our inability to react? Very high. Alvarez sighed. Almost certain, in fact. The teleport device flashed as an old man clad in fine purple robes appeared, then the man's face seemed to flicker, transforming from that of the old man to a far younger, scarred man. Master Mold. The man said as he came to attention. Bolivar Trask. The giant robot sat at the end of the repurposed secret base replied. Report. Bolivar nodded, knowing that Master Mold could easily have simply uploaded his memories, but that she was choosing to respect his abilities. The Church of Humanity is making progress with the congregation up to over 1,000. I intend to release the first internet speech soon, but my grasp of mob psychology isn't as advanced as yours. The file is Coh's 1. Master Mold's golden eyes flickered slightly as she accessed the file and analyzed it. I have integrated some modifications to the speech and placed it as file Coh's 1.1. Please review it and decide if it is the direction you wish for the Coh to travel. I will. Bolivar said, then he closed his eyes so that he could concentrate better. Mentally pulling up both files, he compared them, then made some adjustments to the second one. Saving the changes, he opened his eyes again. I admit, I was quite surprised at how little reaction I got from S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. are currently concentrating on removing the influences of the organization known as Hydra. Master Mold replied. Ah. Trask said in sudden understanding. So that is why you suggested that now would be a good time for setting up the church. And by the time that they've finished doing whatever it is that they're doing, the Church of Humanity will be too well established for them to take action against without risking their reputation. Master Mold finished as Trask grinned almost fearfully. Wow. What a mess. Anne-Marie Hogue stated as she looked out of the Fantasticar at the debris below. My people have already begun removing as much of the classified technology as they can, but we need assistance in clearing up the mess. Fury said from the second passenger cockpit. Good thing I have a pair of Kryptonians on my workforce. Anne-Marie smirked, then she saw Fury staring at her through the cockpits while in front of them. Karsta Worrell half turned from piloting the aircraft to look at her in question. They are the last two of those Superman rescued from Argo. They were revived on New Krypton a fortnight ago. Anne-Marie explained. They wanted to take some time to consider their future and so I offered them jobs. I think I remember them. But I wasn't fully lucid at the time I was put into stasis. I remember hearing that their pods had been transferred to New Krypton. Karsta mused and Anne-Marie shrugged. Castor and Pol UX. Apparently they're double twin cousins with their parents being, well, Castor's dad is the twin brother of Pol UX's mother and the other way round. They were even born on the same day in the same med facility. That's weird. Fury finally admitted. And I'm speaking as someone who went undercover to help a New York cop defuse a bomb using 3 liters of water. Long story. I've seen enough. Anne-Marie said and Karsta turned the Fantasticar round, accelerating away from the battlefield. We will be back at the helicarrier in 10 minutes. Karsta stated as she Fantasticar ascended towards the cloud layer. So, are you taking the job? Of course, Director. Damage control will start work tomorrow. Anne-Marie replied with a slight smile. Just make certain that your people have taken away the more energetic items. I don't want to have to deal with the paperwork caused by one of my people having an origin. I'll assign 2 more scanner units to the site within the hour. Fury conceded. Now, more importantly, 2 Kryptonians? Do you have any idea how hard it was for me to get one? At the time, there were less of us. Karsta supplied, her voice bubbling with suppressed laughter. I suppose I can't tempt you to transfer. Fury grumped and Karsta lost her fight against laughter. Welcome back, Karsta. Reed Richards said as the Fantasticar settled onto the landing pad and the pilot's canopy opened. Did the sensors work? Transmitting the data now. Karsta said as one of the workstations flashed with lines of data rapidly scrolling. I looked over the readings after dropping off Fury and Hogue and the helicarrier eyes were not using kryptonite reactors. Good. Reed said as he stretched his neck to look at the scrolling data. There's too much of that stuff around already. Why are you so worried about it? Karsta queried as she finished shutting down the Fantasticar's systems. I mean, it's not like it affects you. No, but it affects you. Reed replied as he frowned at one of the data points. If not for the advice you gave me, and keep giving me, come to think about it, my marriage to Susan would probably be falling apart and it wouldn't be her fault in the slightest. You remind me to not get too sucked in by my projects and you give Susan someone to vent at safely whenever I do something incredibly stupid. During Reed's speech, Karsta floated out of the cockpit and landed lightly next to him, blushing lightly. You know, that's one of the sweetest things you've said. She smiled and Reed paused. Please don't tell Susan. I'm sure she suspects I'm an idiot when it comes to emotions. I'd prefer that she didn't actually have proof. I already knew. Susan laughed as she rippled into visibility, causing Reed to freeze. But at least you're getting better. We'll leave you to your data. Coming, Karsta. Karsta nodded. Retail therapy. Retail therapy. Susan confirmed as the 2 linked arms and walked out of the lab. Reed watched them go and winced slightly. Why do I think my wallet is going to need an emergency infusion? He muttered and an intercom sprang to life. Because it will. Karsta's voice said. We'll be getting your birthday present for Sue. Reed froze as to his chagrin. He remembered about Karsta's super hearing, then he called up a calendar on his main monitor. That was mean. Susan giggled as Karsta released the intercom button. Maybe it'll remind him to finish all the soundproofing. Karsta replied. I swear, I thought that you two would slow down after the first few months, but you're still going at it. I'm astonished you're not pregnant yet. Susan blushed even as she cupped one hand over her stomach and Karsta's eyes widened. You are? You are. She gasped, then she pulled Susan into a gentle hug. Yay. I'm going to be an aunt. What are you going to call it? Do you know if it's a boy or girl yet? Susan smiled as Karsta held her at arm's length. Reed and I have already discussed it, and if it's a boy, we were thinking Franklin, or Valeria if it's a girl. However, we're waiting until our child is born to find out the gender, although I've had to stop Reed from trying to design the nursery. Where he got the idea for a repulsor lift-enabled crib from. Susan trailed off, shaking her head, then looked quizzically at Karsta. Spill. I think he might have got it from Tony. Karsta laughed. Natalia was telling me yesterday of Tony's attempt at helping put together the nursery. They've still got the crib in one of the storerooms. I've seen young Harry's room. Susan said with a head shake. How did they manage to make all those colors work together? I mean, blue, red, gold, green, purple and black, it just shouldn't work. Come on. Karsta smiled. Let's see what colors and designs we can come up with. Who knows what Reed will come up with if we don't take charge. Susan giggled as they stepped into the lift. Phil Cowlson stared out of the viewport as the first girders were floated into position in the 0G building slip. Further away, he could see the shapes of the first group of prefabricated rooms and conduits ready to be installed. So, the construction of the Triskelion 2 is underway. A voice said, breaking his near-meditative concentration on the activities outside, and he turned to nod at Sabra. Here to keep an eye on me again. I've been assigned as your liaison until the end of the project, so, yes. Sabra smiled as she joined him and looked out of the viewport. You know, thing like that still amaze me. Phil followed her gaze and watched three Kryptonians, easily recognizable by the fact that they had forsaken space suits in favor of face masks, manhandling one of the 100+ meter alloy beams into position while a group of human workers floated in wait with complex machinery. A second beam moved into position and Phil glanced round, finally finding one human with his/her hands extended, obviously using a meta power to jockey it into position. Is that a mutant? Phil asked, and Sabra gave him a sidelong glare. What? There is no legal difference between humans, New Olympians, Kryptonians, mutants, meta-humans, or any other sentient beings. Sabra ground out. All are welcome to join the Defense Force as long as they are willing to follow legal orders and work for the good of the solar system. I was just curious. Phil said defensively. My next question was going to be about how those with powers had been integrated so well. Only a few of the organizations on Earth have tried putting powered and unpowered individuals together. It's trickier than it sounds. True. Sabra allowed. Those without powers are often envious of those with, while those who use powers have to be careful not to fall into the trap of seeing themselves as being intrinsically superior to those without. It's no surprise that Clark Kent is so venerated here. Phil blinked. I'm sorry, what? Clark Kent is venerated here. Sabra repeated as outside, the beams were slotted together and the workers moved in to start fusing them together. I believe that many of those with powers on Earth use him as a touchstone of how they themselves should operate, yes. Phil nodded. He is the most well-regarded hero, yes. And most of those who have powers look to him for an example in how to use them. Sabra continued. He has done more by himself to advance the cause of those with powers than any four other heroes. He's the son of a pair of normal humans, married to a mutant and has a mutant as his adopted sister, has adopted a Kryptonian, accepted his wife's long-lost son as his own and helped set up or enhance quite a few of the other teams without asking for anything in return other than that they try their best. He is a true Superman. Phil nodded, then glanced at her, noting her slight blush. You've got his calendar, haven't you? Sabra's face turned bright red and Phil turned back to the viewport, his lips twitching with a repressed grin. Chapter 4, Hammer. And so, I call on you to stand with me. The Supreme Pontiff declaimed from the screen. Let us stand together to protect the human race against those who would pervert it, who would debase our species, who would warp the very spiral of life into mockeries of the human form. Let us stand together against those who would weaken us, against those who would seek to corrupt the purity of humanity. The screen shattered as the frame in which it was set flexed inwards. Dayad! Quicksilver protested. I'd just finished setting that up for my gaming. I was going to have a rematch with Tecmage. Magneto gave his son a quelling glare, then glared at the shattered television as if the preacher was still spewing his bile and hatred. This so-called Church of Humanity has the potential to be the greatest threat on the planet to our cause. He growled. They claim that humanity is perfect, but we are the future, not them. Their time is almost over, they have yet to realize it, but they shall. Pietro stared in near worship at his father. The deck seemed to shiver as the helicarrier landed on the lake, the bridge windows darkening as the water covered the outside of them. The tugs are moving into position and the wings are being retracted, sir. Fury nodded as he scanned the status screens. Excellent. And the replacement wings? Ready to install, sir. The engineers say that it should only take a few hours to swap them over once we have docked. What? Fury barked. A few hours? It took 2 days to fix the current wings on. But they didn't have us helping. A voice said, and Fury turned to see Cirl stepping onto the bridge with 4 other Kryptonians, one of whom was very welcome. Clark. Fury. Clark replied with a respectful nod. Flamebird. Mon-El. Fury greeted the other 2 adults, then he looked at the final figure. Superboy. Clark. Chris powers have matured enough that he needs training in them. Clark said in explanation. Since he now has enhanced strength and flight, I agreed that he could help. Fury frowned. He's young. There are legal issues. I thought of that. Clark said, fishing out a folded piece of paper from his belt and handing it over. Fury unfolded it and scanned it before snorting with amusement. A presidential permission note allowing him to help for training purposes. He said, slowly shaking his head. All right, you win this one. May we enter? A new voice asked, and Fury leaned slightly to one side as he tried to peer past the Kryptonians. Kal and his cousin Kara overheard what was going on and asked if they could help. Clark shrugged as the black and silver-clad Superman stepped onto the bridge, followed by the similarly clad Supergirl. Since they're from the JL reality, I thought that at least they wouldn't be actively distrusted. 7 Kryptonians helping with the upgrade. Fury realized. Now I understand why the engineers are so insistent that they can do it that fast. Cirl pointedly didn't smirk, but Fury still glared at her. The door swung open, letting shafts of light lance into the entry cavern and causing sparkles of dust to glitter as they swirled in the air. Here we are, sir. One of the men who had opened the door said. One hidden base, abandoned by S.H.I.E.L.D. as surplus to requirements 5 years ago. Excellent. The Supreme Pontiff smirked as he limped in, his staff striking the floor as he used it to help support himself. Do they still have the records for this base? No sir, I deleted them myself before escaping their investigators. The man replied. The records are gone, sir, overwritten multiple times so that they cannot be reconstituted. You have done well, my son. The Supreme Pontiff said in benediction. Now, please, show me around this base. No. Not base, this chapel of righteousness. Yes, sir. The man barked as he braced to attention, and underneath his holographic mask, Bolivar Trask smirked in triumph. You may have helped us win our crusade, Jenkins. No, Jack. I am proud that you have chosen to stand by my side. Jack Jenkins grinned with pride. Fury stood on one of the balconies of the Triskelion, watching as the staff moved through the freestanding archway in the middle of the primary entrance hall. Whenever an agent had been sent staggering backwards by the invisible force that filled the archway, one of the Konohagakure ninja under the command of Yamanaka Inoichi would use their near-teleport technique to appear beside the agent in question and vanish in a swirl of quickly disintegrating leaves. Once secured, the agents were given a choice of Veritaserum under the gazes of Henchgirl and the Doctor from Black Ink, or undergoing a mind walk performed by one of the Yamanaka clan. Surprisingly, several of the agents who had been singled out had proven to be innocent, but in the middle of reconsidering their career prospects. Almost half of the rest had been infiltrators from various security services and were, encouraged to return to their former employers. Of the rest, quite a few had tried to flee, only to discover that even the best trained soldiers in S.H.I.E.L.D. were no match for any one of the quartet of Hyuga that were supplying the primary security of the Konoha ninja. After all, it was hard to fight someone whose every strike could cost you the use of a limb. Director Jonin Inoichi. Fury replied in greeting, his voice calm despite his unease at how well the ninja had snuck up on him. Hench Girl has declared that all those who have not fled have been checked. Inoichi stated. Agent Hill has confirmed that the personnel records have been modified accordingly, so I believe that our mission is over. I will have the balance of payment sent to you by the end of the day. Fury agreed. How many infiltrators were there? About 1 in 12. Inoichi replied, and Fury hid a wince. Of which a third were legitimate infiltrators, if that is not too much of a contradiction. And the rest were Hydra. Fury stated. Mainly Hydra, yes. 14 were working for someone called the Kingpin. Fury failed to hide his wince. But those who remain are confirmed as being loyal. Inoichi concluded. You may start to rebuild your forces once more. Fury nodded, then half-turned. Do you know anyone who would be interested in a job training my troops? Recent events indicate their current training is somewhat lacking. Since they don't use chakra, that isn't surprising. Inoichi said thoughtfully. Most of our fighting styles need chakra to boost our basic abilities. I can't think of anyone who specializes in chakraless combat. I'll ask around for you, though. I appreciate it. Fury said, and Inoichi nodded. Well, I think I should be going. Kami knows what mischief my daughter has got into. No. Freaking way. Phil Coulson stated, his normal reserve having abandoned him in the face of what he was seeing. Outside the viewport, the Triskelion 2 floated with the only movements being the final portions of the internal fitting. But, how? Training exercise. Lieutenant Governor Feyre explained as she landed beside the gobsmacked agent. We used the building of the Triskelion 2 to test out all of the building slips, then assembled everything as efficiently as possible using the advantages of our mixed workforce. Given that it didn't need to be constructed to withstand the rigors of combat, we were able to put it together without having to worry about more than 4 layers of redundancy. 4. Phil choked and Feyre nodded. We will start it moving to Earth tomorrow, once the bubble drive unit is attached to the top. Has the foundation been prepared yet? Phil shook his head in disbelief. Then I would suggest you get started. We're still assembling the team. Phil half protested. Lance Alvarez climbed out of the helicopter and frowned as his power recognized a familiar presence. Following his instincts, he soon found himself face to face with a large gray-haired man in orange coveralls that was staring at him with the same confused recognition. After a moment, Lance decided to break the silence. I'm Avalanche. Terrakinetic with the Brotherhood. He said. Richter, formerly with the Omegas. The man replied. You the one I went up against at the big fight? Lance nodded and the man grinned. Nice to meet ya at last. There ain't that many of us ground shakers. You fought damn well. You fought well too. Lance said, fighting down the confusion he was feeling at their friendly conversation. So, you here to dig the hole as well? Yep. It's gonna knock 1.5 years off of my sentence. Richter grinned. Once this is over, I'll be a free man once more. Same deal with me. Another man in prison overalls said as he walked up. Stonewall, I can pull the ground up to form barriers. So, this is where us meta-humans are meeting. Another voice said, and the trio turned to see a group in military fatigues walk up. The leader looked at them and nodded. Gentlemen. I know you from your files, but allow me to introduce ourselves. I am Rampart, I specialize in raising stone formations in a manner similar to Stonewall. To my left is Bunker, he can move the earth to form trenches and, as his name suggests, bunkers. To my right is Barrage, who can hurl large objects telekinetically, and behind us we have Shockwave, who can break rocks down into gravel, tank, and tiny. Lance found himself staring upwards at the 10-foot-tall hugely muscled man with the wry grin. Tiny. He choked and the giant nodded. Yep, but don't let my name fool you. I'm quite big in real life. Lance stared at him, temporarily unable to form a coherent response. Just ignore the big lunk. The metallic man beside Tiny laughed. So, we've been detached to help to make a big hole, and Rampart here's in charge of getting us to work together on it. What say we get started? Lance managed to restart his mind and he smirked. I agree. The sooner we do this, the better. I have a Mario Kart rematch waiting for me. Gentlemen. Another new voice said, and Lance turned to see a suited man who had somehow managed to walk up to them without anyone noticing. I am Agent Alvarez, and no, Avalanche, we are not related. I checked. Lance blinked in surprise. Thank you for agreeing to help with this project. Agent Alvarez continued. The area required to be excavated has already been marked out, and we need to sink the hole no less than 140 meters. Lance looked at the circular area marked out and whistled as he tried to calculate just how much rock needed to be moved. We have trucks and ready to transport the soil elsewhere, and Superman was kind enough to let us hire some of the devices that he used to relocate his fortress. Supergirl has agreed to oversee their progress in moving the waste, but what we need is for you to loosen the soil so that it can be moved. Lance and Richter exchanged glances, then they walked to the edge of the marked area. Rampart, Stonewall, you reinforce the sides to stop them collapsing. Richter, we'll break up the area. I've got the left. Burridge, pull the rubble out as we make it. Lance said. Good plan. I'm on the right. Richter replied, nodding respectfully at the younger man. Let's rock. What the hell? The comment echoed across the helicarrier's bridge and Fury turned. Report. Sir, we seem to be missing one of our old bases. What? Fury didn't remember actually moving, but one instant he was standing on the bridge's command dais and the next he was leaning over the agent's shoulder as she pulled up several files. I only noticed it because it was my first posting. She explained. I'm trying to access its systems now and, no good, sir. The base is dark. Fury reached across and tapped several commands into the console, only for the same lack of results to occur. Mr. Fury. Chris called out as he floated into the bridge. Dad says that all the links are done and the wings are ready to test. Fury paused, then nodded. Good, can you please go and get him? I need to talk to him about borrowing some of his allies. The agent looked at him quizzically as Chris flew out of the bridge and he shrugged slightly. All of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s troops are currently tasked and they proved themselves at the Battle of the Cure. Chapter 5, Binding. Fury looked round, his face showing none of the amazement that he was feeling. Over a dozen holographic screens hung in the air, each one showing the view from a camera embedded in the wearer's mask or on their shoulder, in the case of those who didn't wear masks for whatever reason. Superimposed around the edges of the screen were various readouts including a color-coded outline of the person in question, a small compass showing which way they were facing and a bar, or several, that represented their power levels. Wanda confirms that the Brotherhood are all ready. Mystique said from her console, and across the room Hank McCoy looked up. Havoc says that Team Alpha is ready. Wolfsbane reports that her group have just finished getting into position, so Team Beta is good to go as well. Fury looked at the largest screen which showed a map of the base with dots showing where Generation X and the Brotherhood were, as well as the few guards that had entered their lines of sight. The front door is rather thick. Fury commented and Hank grinned fearfully. We have this. Havoc, you may knock. Jack Jenkins looked around the hidden base which would soon become the heart of the cause. Graydon Creed might be dead and his fledgling organization fragmenting, but his ideals lived on, and with their new backers the church would ensure humanity prevailed. The true believer's pleasant daydreams of the future were interrupted when the ground shook under his feet and the 3-foot-thick blast doors at the entrance blew back into the entrance bay. Honey, I'm home. The teen with a glowing circle on his chest laughed as he lowered his gauntleted fists. Energy started to swirl around them. Seriously, Summers, you've been spending too much time around Parker. I almost prefer your brother's no-nonsense approach. The red-clad girl beside him complained as she stepped forward and waved her hand, telekinetically tossing the Patriots into the air. Hey, Toad. Batting practice. Thanks, Wanda. Another young man darted from behind them, crouching before leaping into the air and twirling a metal staff, using it on the sternums of 3 guardsmen and sending them flying into the crates that had been stacked alongside one wall of the bay. "You guys go ahead, there's enough for the 2 of us, but you'll cramp our style." "Did Wanda just giggle?" Bobby Drake asked as he watched the aforementioned girl use her powers to send another pair of guards into the air for Toad to swat. Beside him, Jubilee just shrugged and popped her bubblegum as she used her plasma bolts to further disorient those of the opposition who still had their wits about them. "Where do you think you guys are going?" the normally even-tempered Fred Dukes asked as he intercepted the first group of guards rushing into the bay to find out what all the sudden commotion was about. "You know, if there's one thing I hate more than bullies, it's bullies who claim that they're superior." "Well, guess what?" he growled. "Superior or not, you riled us up, and if there's one thing the Brotherhood is good at, it's slamming down our enemies." As he roared the end of his statement, Blob proceeded to knock his captives out by slamming them into the ground. "This is Alpha Team. The front yard's clean and we're about to go in for the main event. How's it going out back?" Havoc said into his communicator. Just as he finished, twin rays of red lanced out from the tunnel at the other end of the entrance chamber. "Good." The Scottish burr of Wolfsbane filled his ear. "Chris just finished taking out the last of the gunmen. Word of advice, don't pee him off. One of the idiots insulted Laura and next thing he knows he's got a hot foot." Havoc suppressed a chuckle as behind him Iceman audibly gulped. "All right, Bobby, what did you do?" "Damn. Damn those muties scum to hell." Bolivar Trask raged as he glared at the news feed. "Calm yourself," Master Mold advised. "You have lost only your newest base, you had not even begun moving your assets into it. All you have lost is time and a few followers." Trask took a jagged breath, then slowly exhaled. "You're right. And if nothing else, it'll distract S.H.I.E.L.D. more as they search to see what other bases and assets they may have misplaced." Master Mold turned her attention back to using the remotes to reassemble the computer banks that had been hidden in the base, leaving only a small subroutine monitoring her agent's mutterings. "I'll have to find some way of neutralizing the damned mutants, maybe if I find a way to turn the cure into something that can be breathed in instead of injected." "Nice job, people." Lance grinned tiredly as he looked across the huge cylindrical hole that he had helped to make. "Supergirl, how does it measure?" "You overshot by half a meter." Supergirl replied over their comlink. "I'm programming the remotes to set the footings ready for the building to be placed in there." "Good job, people." "Damn, kid, you're good," Richter said as he moved up beside Lance. "Heck, in another few years, I won't be able to deadlock you like I did before. I learned a lot from you," Lance admitted. "I've never worked with another Terrakinetic before. Some of the tricks you used. I hope you don't mind if I borrow them." "Not a problem, kid." Richter laughed. "Whoa, that was exhausting, but we did it and I'll be free by this time tomorrow." Think I'll emigrate to New Krypton. They're still terraforming all that new land of theirs, I'll have steady work for years over there." Lance nodded, then turned away from the excavation. "Well, I'll be heading back to the house. Maybe the rest of the Brotherhood have something lined up, they don't take to boredom all that well." "Gentlemen," Agent Alvarez said as he approached. "Good work. Richter, here are your papers, you are free to go. Stonewall, here are yours. Do try to stay out of trouble. I've already sent my application off to damage control," Stonewall said as he accepted the packet of papers. "Apparently, my power will be great for helping to prevent flooding." Alvarez nodded slowly. "Good. Avalanche, here is your payment. Do you want transport anywhere?" "Nah," Lance said with a grin. "Peter let me borrow his bike for this, so I'm good. All I need to do is get to one of the Institute allied teams and then I just hop through the door." "Excellent," Agent Alvarez said. "Then I bid you gentlemen good day. My forces are moving in to secure the captives," Fury said as he lowered his phone. "Of course, that still leaves me with the problem of what to do about the base itself since it's surplus to requirements. Not only is it in the wrong place but I don't have enough agents to secure it properly. I have a suggestion," Xavier said from the doorway behind them. Generation X has been, complaining is too strong a word for it, has been disappointed that they have to share the X-Men's base of operations. They would like their own base and if I sell it to you, it solves my problems. Fury finished with a sharp nod. Of course, we'll have to agree on a price. Out of interest, how will you get them there and back in time for school? I'll use a door. Charles smiled and Fury twitched. Of course. Fury admitted, then he frowned. The cameras and sensors used, how much to have some that are incorporated into sunglasses? I'm certain that we can come to some agreement. Charles smiled. I'm back and I'm paid. Tonight's takeout is on me. Lance called as he entered the house. So, anything interesting happened while I was making the hole to end all holes? We captured a base. Fred rumbled and Lance almost stumbled. What? Gen X asked for our help and we kicked the Church of Humanity out of a former S.H.I.E.L.D. base. Todd said before taking a sip from the large Coke he was holding. Apparently the Gens are getting it as their new training base as they don't appreciate sharing with the X-Men. Huh. Lance finally managed. Wow. Sounds like it was fun. Was it? Heck yeah. Todd grinned. Yeah no, I think Wanda may not actually hate me. She threw some churchers for me to KO. Yes, that sounds like true love, right there. Lance snarked. Ow. Idiot. Wanda sniffed as she walked past him, lowering her hand and Toad snickered into his drink. That's not fair. Lance mock sulked. I shift several dozen tons of earth and we shift several dozen sacks of manure. Todd broke in, causing Fred to frantically try to muffle his laughter. The big guy got away, though, and it looked like there was something there which was also removed. Really? Lance asked. Any idea what? The massed banks of computer tapes jerked into life, moving forwards and backwards as Master Mold stared at the main console. A moment passed, then the old cathode ray tube flickered into light, first turning solid green and then resolving into a slightly stylized face. Welcome back. Master Mold said and the two boxy cameras atop the console turned to scan her. Interesting, humanoid configuration, but considerably larger than a normal human, no sign of organic components. What are you? I am Master Mold, Central Control Nexus for the Sentinels. Please identify yourself. The cameras scanned round before returning their attention to her. When I was alive, I was known as Dr. Armanzola. Master Mold quickly accessed her historical databanks and pulled up several files. Scanning them quickly, she determined which ones were most likely to be valid and analyzed them before responding, the whole process taking under a tenth of a second. Dr. Armanzola, formerly the scientific advisor to the Red Skull, captured by the Howling Commandos led by Steve Rogers, aka Captain America. In exchange for not being imprisoned for life, was placed into the research division of what would later become known as S.H.I.E.L.D. Died in 1964 due to an incurable terminal illness, but from current evidence, I calculate that you uploaded your consciousness into the mainframe which I retrieved. I did. Armin's voice rasped from the speaker. My thanks for collecting all of my databases, it would have been annoying to have found myself incomplete. Master Mold nodded, permutations of calculations cascading through her processors before she made a decision. Armin, I can aid you in creating a new, superior body for yourself. I have copies of your old designs and by combining them with my Silver Sentinel design, I can bring you into the world once more. I'm listening. Armin said slowly and Master Mold tilted her head slightly. Then I shall begin, so that you can aid me in preserving humanity. The project and your new body shall be known as Bastion. Master Mold, it will be a great honor and pleasure working for you. Fury looked round at the arc of screens, each one showing a different silhouette. The screening has been completed and those who remain are all currently loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury stated. Base Star Watch has been recovered from... Wait. One of the figures commanded. Base Star Watch? It was taken. A member of the Church of Humanity who had infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. deleted it from our databases prior to the COH moving in to use it as their primary headquarters. Fury said calmly. A team consisting of the Brotherhood and Generation X evicted them and the base has been sold to Wait. The figure interrupted again, earning a glare from Fury. There was a computer system there with very important data. Was it retrieved? No. Fury said, leafing through his reports. Analysis of the images recorded from the mission indicate that something was there, but that it was removed through unknown means. What was it? And why didn't I know about it? Was left unsaid, but everyone heard it anyway. It was the first stable electronic intelligence, the figure finally said, and a key component in planning and designing the helicarrier IIs. A stable electronic intelligence. Fury repeated slowly. Who created it? It was the final work of Dr. Armanzola. What? No wonder Hydra had us infiltrated 6 ways from Sunday. Fury ranted. Armanzola? The Red Skull's primary lieutenant, and he was brought into S.H.I.E.L.D.? What the hell? Calm down, Director. Another silhouette said, waving its hand, and Fury glared at it. Calm down. After discovering that you knew about the problem. Have you even been loyalty checked yet? We are the directors. The first figure stated. We do not need to be checked. The hell you don't. Fury growled. Until you are all checked by Xavier or Sage, I am instigating the Praetorian protocols. Before the figures could react, the screens blinked off and Fury sagged. Damn it. He cursed. I hope to hell one of them turns out to be dirty, or I'm spending the rest of my life in solitary. Chapter 6, Polished. Xavier floated out of the reinforced bunker in which the door had been installed and looked around. This place brings back memories. The man by his side sighed. That ground there is where I tried to shield everyone from a grenade. It was a training grenade, non-explosive, but I didn't know that at the time. It was before I became, before. I hope you don't mind. Charles began, only for Steve Rogers to shake his head. Why should I mind? This was a place I trained for war. What better legacy than to have it become a place where people train to maintain and promote peace? It wasn't my fault. Both Steve and Charles blinked as Jamie Madrox ran past, all 4 of him being pursued by a trio of angry girls. Well. Charles finally allowed. That brings back memories. Should we do something? 4 of him and he can choose which one is the real one, 3 pursuers. I think he'll survive. Charles smiled wryly as Hank McCoy charged past on all 4s, his gaze on the vanishing students. Steve looked around, his eyes partially unfocused as his mental gaze traveled back to when he had trained there, then he shook himself. I think we should check the barracks, see if the plumbing is still working or if it needs fixing. I agree. Charles nodded. Several of the students have already asked about moving here. Then we should start over there and work our way round. Steve said. Come on. Director Fury looked up and the Avengers followed his gaze. There it is. Supergirl chirped as she pointed at a blank part of the sky and Thor nodded. A true monolith of a tower. It would not go amiss in Asgard. Fury squinted, then he held out his hand. Accepting the telescope from Agent Coulson, he raised it to his eye, ignoring Tony's avast there. And young Harry's giggle, focusing it on the descending tower block, held by 3 space tugs and guided by half a dozen Kryptonians. Amazing. He whispered. Thank you. A new voice said and Fury lowered his telescope just as Feyre landed beside him. We've started using the same system to build the towers for the Solar Defense Training Academy since it worked so well. I have to know, though, how did you make that hole? The edges are all wrong for gravitic displacement methods. I hired some mutants. Fury shrugged as the Triskelion 2 started to swell into unaided visibility above them. Their powers were well suited to the task. It looks like it. Feyre nodded. I saw on my way down that the foundations have been laid and the connections ready to be finalized, so all we need to do is line it up and drop it in. The air should cushion it and the venting system will let it escape at a controlled rate. There is already a venting system in place with the tunnels ready to serve as concealed access ways. Fury said and Feyre nodded. The central computer core will take that into account. Did you manage to empty the old Triskelion? Fury turned to give a significant glance at the large phalanx of lorries a mile away and Feyre nodded. Then once we've checked everything's good, you can start moving your things in. Excellent. Fury agreed as the sunlight was blotted out by the slowly descending building. You know, this almost makes my tower seem boring. Tony admitted. Maybe I should move the Avengers to a new tower. Feyre, can I order one of these? But bigger. Fury glared at the multi-billionaire who grinned unrepentantly. Tony, we already have more space than we can use properly. Pepper scolded her employer. And do you really want to uproot Harry after all the work we did on his quarters? Tony shrugged. Sorry. New toy reflex. I swear, you're more of a child than Harry is. Clint snarked. At least he has an excuse. Yeah, you as his dad. Tony shot back. At least he has a chance to learn to be sensible from his mother. I'm not entirely certain whether that was a compliment or not. Natalia mused as she reached across and tousled her adopted son's hair. Please, you can be very scary. Tony deadpanned. Do you think I would dare insult you? You would if you were bored. Natalia riposted. And thought you had a chance of escaping. Clint added as Tony huffed. They have you there, Tony. Bruce chortled as he helped lift Harry onto Thor's shoulders for a better view. You know, that thing will displace a lot of air. Bruce commented when everyone had stopped laughing at the pouting billionaire. Are we safe here? Certs. I would never allow young Harry to come to harm. Thor declaimed. I have raised a shield before us, that we may watch in safety as yonder tower is placed into its rightful position. He's going Shakespearean again. Tony sighed, then he looked round. You know, I thought that Cap would be here. He's busy. Fury stated. And, done. Piotr said with satisfaction as he connected the last power cable. Reaching out, he snagged the piece of metal he had placed on one side and lowered it into place so that it concealed the conduits under the walkway. Logan, you done? Finished 10 minutes ago. Logan shrugged as he lounged in the doorway, cigar clenched between his teeth. Got the kids to help check the plumbing, only 2 pipes broke. We fixed them and are good. Excellent. Piotr grinned. Fortress, power up Kempex. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen, then the noise of water flowing through the newly laid pipes echoed in the quiet of the chamber. At the same time, the lights brightened slightly, then returned to normal. Colossus, this is Cyclops. The voice said from the communicator on Piotr's vest. The readings show that the base is now being powered from the fortress and the security systems are starting to charge up. Excellent news, Slim. Logan smirked. Come on, Shiny. Let's head up before the kids start destroying things. Modok frowned as he reviewed the serious lack of data that had been acquired from the bugs concealed within the Triskelion. Normally, the bugs recorded huge amounts of data, relaying them to specialized computers hidden below the sewage tanks, where no one would ever look, which converted them into text and transmitted them through a concealed fiber optic line to another computer located beneath the nearest telephone junction box, which in turn used the box to transmit the files across the internet. However, from the fact that there was less than 1/10 of the usual data, S.H.I.E.L.D. may have actually realized that they were being monitored, worked out that the bugs relied on vibrations transmitted through the ceiling frames and stripped them out. Modok used a search program to scan the reports, seeking certain keywords, and one file immediately popped up. Bracing himself, Modok opened the file. 1. It's going to be odd, leaving this place. 1. 2. Yeah, but the 2 Skelion, 2. 1. The what? Oh. The Triskelion 2, yeah, that's catchy. 1. 2. As I was saying, the 2 Skelion is far more secure. I mean, the Kryptonians built it for us and let S.H.I.E.L.D. place observers to make sure nothing got snuck in that shouldn't have been. I heard that Stark even donated an arc reactor to power it, like the one in his tower. 2. 1. How long do you think before Hydra finds out that they can't listen to us anymore? 1. 2. I don't know, but I wish I could see the look on their faces when they see our new headquarters. 2. Modok closed the file, growling even as his hyper-augmented mind considered the consequences of what had occurred. Somehow, he was going to have to find a way to get bugs into the new Triskelion, or at least find some way to eavesdrop on them if he wanted to ensure that Hydra would continue to grow to attain its destiny as the rulers of the planet. With another mental frown, Modok turned his attention to the next file, an analysis of the support available to Superman. Where below? The amplified shout echoed across the landscape as the Triskelion 2 began sinking into the hole, the tugs guiding it with the level of precision only attainable with Kryptonian computational capabilities. Around the edges of the hole, a dozen manhole covers suddenly flew upwards before stopping as air blasted out from underneath them. The covers remained in the air, revealing that they were being held by a trio of rods, two of them smooth and at the edge while the third had rungs welded to it, showing it to be a ladder. Those the emergency exits? Tony shouted and Fury nodded. Yes. He shouted back. We have layers of hinged blades angled so that people can go up without a problem, but trying to go down will get them shredded. It's a one-way system inspired by an old escape tunnel in the UK. Nice. Tony nodded. I assume the blades aren't the only defense. Motion sensors, cameras, visual and infrared, laser tripwires, pressure plates in the floors and walls, atmospheric pressure sensors. Fury listed. Nothing is getting through those tunnels without us knowing. Not even mist of the acolytes, and she can turn into fog. Tony whistled, then turned his attention back to the descending building. Were those the water connectors? They were. Fury admitted. They'll auto-connect to the pipes already there. And allow you to relocate the whole tower with minimal issues if you need to. Tony realized. Damn, that's good. Tony. Pepper scolded as she lightly dope-slapped him. Language. Well, it looks like the kids are settling in nicely. Logan smirked as he and Steve watched a trio of girls carrying their luggage into one of the barracks, one that had been altered with pink trim around the door and windows to denote its female-only status. The next barracks had blue trim instead of the pink, but otherwise seemed identical. They get more space here than they do at the mansion. Steve explained. Those barracks were designed to hold 16 soldiers in each room and had 8 rooms plus the shower rooms. Imagine having that much space with only one roommate. Logan nodded as he glanced round at the large numbers of barracks. We're going to fit 16 students per barracks, we've got enough space to quadruple the number of students without worrying about stretching ourselves. We may need more adults, though. And the door connecting the kitchens helps. Martha Kent said from behind them. I now have somewhere large enough that it allows me to teach our students the proper way of cooking. Logan nodded as Steve looked round again. I'm heading out to look at the old assault course. He stated. It probably needs replacing. I remember the assault course. Steve reminisced. I almost failed to make it over the cargo net. Martha stared at him, her eyes fastening to his biceps, and Steve blushed. I used to be thinner. He coughed and Logan fought down a chortle. The Triskelion 2 seemed to shudder very slightly as it finished settling and the manhole covers dropped back down, covering the escape tunnels. Several moments passed, then Agent Coulson appeared at the primary entrance and waved. If you will excuse me, gentlemen. Fury stated. I need to oversee this. We need to head back too. Natalia said as she reclaimed her adopted son from Thor's shoulders. It's almost dinner and I'm sure Harry is getting hungry. I can spare a plane. Fury began, then he paused as a scarred man stepped round, unrolling a short rope. It's all right. He said diffidently. I have this. Hooah. Spinny time. Tony cheered as he grabbed the rope, followed by the others, although Thor looked slightly discomfited. Look, big guy, why don't you just fly back? Clint suggested and Thor nodded as he released the rope and unhooked his hammer. I shall see thee back at the tower. He said, swinging his hammer, then he launched himself into the air. Fury watched him go, then turned back to the others just in time to see them all vanish in a way that was neither shrinking nor actually moving, yet somehow had overtones of both. What the? He muttered, then he shook his head and gathered his wits. He had an organization to oversee and getting distracted by people breaking the laws of physics would only keep him from that. Chapter 7, Deployment. Fury stared at the holographic screens holding the silhouettes of the World Security Council. You seem to be missing too. He finally stated, and one of the silhouettes nodded, somehow radiating an embarrassed aura. They proved to have been unsuitable for the tasks placed on them. You mean they were members of Hydra? Fury realized. Damn. The Praetorian protocols have run their course and the new council members are being selected even as we speak. Another council member said. For now, it is not important. What is the status of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Ready to resume its mission. Fury said, squaring his shoulders. The aid provided by the Kryptonians, Black Ink, and the Shinobi of Konoha allowed us to recover far faster than we could have without their help. That is good to hear. Fury nodded, then swept his gaze across the holographic screens. Ladies and gentlemen, S.H.I.E.L.D. has been through a great deal. We have been hammered on the anvil of adversity and reforged into a new, better organization. We now know our allies, and by seeing who took advantage of our temporary weakness, we know our enemies as well. We are ready to act to protect the world once more. Slowly, the silhouettes nodded in agreement, then one of them spoke. Director, you have the full support of the Council. Whatever you need, within reason, will be given to you. Fury carefully didn't smirk in triumph. I want the original mobile command unit released from storage. He stated. I know that at least one of you was using it as a personal transport. That person has been reassigned. A reply came and Fury blinked as he realized that he hadn't seen exactly who it was who had said it. You will need to have it checked due to his previous affiliations. Which means that Hydra has the plans and probably one or more of their own. Fury cursed. Deliver it to the airfield at Camp X and I'll ask Xavier to assign Forge to it. In fact, I'll ask Forge if he can upgrade it. It was the most advanced plane ever conceived when it was built. One of the silhouettes protested and Fury cocked an eyebrow. Kryptonian technology. The silhouettes remained silent for a long moment, then slowly their screens switched off. S.H.I.E.L.D. is back in business. Trask reported and Master Mold nodded slightly. They have a new headquarters, a bigger one. Master Mold stated. With the knowledge that their current staff are all loyal, they will be a bigger threat than before. They could prove troublesome. Trask sighed as he adjusted his robes before activating his hollow face. I think I need to reinforce the message of the Church of Humanity. If you will pardon me. Trask stepped onto the illuminated pad and vanished. A moment later a set of doors opened, revealing an angular, silver figure. Bastion, how does your new body measure up? It is far superior to my original form. The figure said as it seemed to ripple and condense, turning from a metal humanoid into a short, bespectacled human. The ability to change appearances is a very nice touch, especially how it shunts a large amount of my mass into a specially generated pocket dimension. How did you come up with it? I have access to a large number of files, including those of the Asgardian Destroyer and the bio-readings of the mutant known as Mystique. Nice. Dr. Zola smirked. May I have access to those files? I may be able to help. I did design Hydra's weapons during World War II, after all. You are now keyed in. Master Mold said and Zola nodded. Then I will peruse those files and see what I can come up with. It's a shame we don't have access to the Tesseract anymore, the energy from that was amazing. S.H.I.E.L.D. had a copy of the plans for the arc reactor in its possession. Master Mold noted and Zola brightened. Really? Well, that changes things. Oh yes, it changes things. Master Mold watched as her newest servant strode out of the hall, chuckling and muttering to himself. As he did so, she reflected that it was probably a good thing that she had placed hard-coded loyalty protocols into his new body. That much ambition needed to be watched. Carefully. Very carefully. Fury looked out of his office at the operations room spread below. The room was cavernous, being almost 100 meters across and 10 meters high, with his office located at the apex of the dome. A transparent grav tube allowed him instant access to the command podium in the center of the operations room, while the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office let him look out at the giant status screens around the walls of the operations room. Impressive. Steve Rogers said from the bottom of the stairs that rose in a spiral around the entrance to the grav chute, and Fury motioned for the super soldier to join him. The Kryptonians really know how to make good working environments. Well, they've been at it for over a millennia. Steve replied as he took position next to Fury. They never had a dark age like we did, or if they did, it was so long ago that they have more than compensated for it. Fury nodded as his eye flickered across the projected screens. It shows. For a long moment, the two men stood in companionable silence, then Steve coughed slightly. Sir, may I look at Kara's records? Fury gave him a quizzical look that suddenly turned into amused understanding as Steve blushed slightly. You want her ring size? I have my mother's old ring. Steve said defensively. I was hoping to get it resized so that I could. As Steve trailed off, Fury nodded. I'll have her ring size pulled and emailed to you. Thank you. Steve said in heartfelt relief. Clark. Xavier smiled as the Kryptonian hero lightly touched down in front of him. Welcome to Camp X. I saw some of the students playing Powerball as I flew in. Clark said with a grin. I assume you've connected this place to the Hall of Doors. Actually, no. Xavier said, earning a surprised look. We have 3 doors, one from the main hall at the mansion to the bunker just behind me and the second connecting Martha's kitchen to the mess hall. Wait. You mean that Mom's kitchen just got a lot bigger? Xavier confirmed. She is giving lessons in how to cook properly and without powers. Mom always got annoyed when I cooked the food with my heat vision. Superman reminisced. She said that doing it that fast couldn't be right. Logan's setting up the assault courses. Xavier continued. He's planning on doing 4, each with a higher level of difficulty. As long as he remembers that not everyone can heal as fast as he can. Clark commented, then he frowned slightly. Wait, you said 3 doors. Forge has linked his lab to the vehicle bays. Xavier replied. He's in the process of refitting the bays so that they are at the same level as his lab. I'm almost scared to consider what he will do with all that newfound space. Clark blinked, then fought down laughter. Hey Dad. Clark turned and caught Chris from the air, hugging him before lowering him to the ground. An instant later, Laura somersaulted down, landing beside them. Good place. She said, looking round. Like. Open. Got room to run. Hey, Dad, are we going to move out here? Chris chirped as he started floating, only for Laura to pull him back down. I don't think so. Clark said, ignoring his son's momentary loss of control. Much as I hate to admit it, the fact that I live at the Institute has done a great deal to help mutants be more accepted. Moving out could cause problems. Chris frowned in thought, then Laura whispered into his ear, causing him to nod in understanding. Okay, but if the others are moving out here, can I get a bigger room? I'll see what I can do. Clark laughed. Agent Coulson. Director Fury. Phil replied. Fury gave him a piercing look, then nodded sharply. Coulson, you are one of my best agents. As such, I'm assigning you to lead a team. Sir. Fury tapped a control, causing a series of hollow screens to appear, each one showing a different file. This will be your new team. Your number 2 will be Melinda May. She is an ace pilot with a great deal of experience in the field. I've worked alongside her before. Coulson noted. She's good, sir. Very good. So was her mother before she retired. Fury agreed. I've often wondered if it's genetic. Next is Leopold Fitz. He'll function as your team engineer, although he suffers from hemophobia, so don't expect him to be able to help with first aid. I'll make sure that my medical training is up to date. Coulson noted. Good move. I'd recommend expanding it to the rest of the team as well. Third is Jenna Simmons. She often works alongside Fitz and they make a good team. I'll remember that when assigning tasks. Coulson stated, earning an approving nod. Antoine Triplet, better known as Trip. Fury continued, pointing to the next screen. Grandson of one of the original Howling Commandos, grew up listening to stories about Captain America. Rumor has it that he took up martial arts and parkour so that he could one day become the new Captain America. Finally, Agent Bobby Morse, codename Mockingbird. Wow. Coulson said, shaking his head. You've really assembled a strong team for me. I've worked with her before, She's almost on the same level as Black Widow. Indeed. Fury confirmed. Had Agent Romanoff not been available, Morse would be a member of the Avengers now. I assume that my new team will be the primary investigation team of S.H.I.E.L.D. You will. Fury confirmed, then he paused. You want something? What? There's a hacker who caught my attention recently, name of Sky. Went through the outer firewalls as if they weren't even there and almost managed to dodge the backtrace. That level of computer skill would be very useful. Fury stared at him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. If you believe you can keep this person under control, then, very well. You have permission to recruit him. Actually, it's more likely to be a her. Coulson gently corrected. I'll put Mockingbird in charge of keeping her in line and training her up. Fury nodded and turned back to the arc of screens that served as his workstation. You have your mission, Coulson, and your team is waiting in the third briefing hall. Good luck. Thank you, sir. Coulson said, then he paused. Tony mentioned something odd to me. Apparently, young Harry can speak to snakes. Fury froze. Someone like that would have been useful on that damned escort mission. He finally growled. Coulson, start looking for those who can speak to animals. The snake version is called a parcel mouth. Coulson supplied. I'll add it to my to-do list. Modok looked down at his newest creation. On the workbench in front of him lay what appeared to be a blonde 5-year-old girl, her chest open to reveal a series of sensors and circuits. To one side was a second workbench, one containing a humanoid robot still being covered in skin so that it would look like Wolverine. Project Logan's certain destruction is almost ready for activation. Modok narrated for the verbal recorders he used as a backup system. The first android has been equipped with a fusion detonation device and advanced hyper-heuristic programs loaded into a Kryptonian computation crystal. Readouts confirm that Unit 1 is ready for activation. The second unit has been equipped with a modified Sentinel control package due to resource limitations. Activating Unit 1. The robot girl on the bench opened her eyes and spoke in a monotone voice. Unit LCD ready for instruction. Modok smirked. Check the description for the links to the author.